This is Barry Street in downtown Kingston, said to have been named after Colonel Samuel Barry, an officer in the English Army which captured Jamaica from Spain in 1655. Colonel Barry owned much of the land on which Kingston was built after the 1692 earthquake. Many Chinese came to live and work on Barry Street, so many in fact that people call the place Chinatown. Today we are meeting Mr. Vincent Chang at the temple in Barry Street to find out more about the temple. Here is Mr. Vincent Chang.
Mr. Chang, this is a very busy place to have a temple. Was it always like this?
Always like this,
But
because
the scene has changed, hasn't it?
it has definitely changed. Everybody lived here, downtown. This is actually the center core of the retail trade, the wholesale trade in Jamaica. And the Chinese came and they lived here.
What was the temple meant to do?
The temple definitely, as a temple, as a building, as a meeting place. Literally, it was more than, it was multifunctional, as you will see, because they needed a place for the new Chinese in 1891 to come, because some Chinese who came here probably had families outside of Kingston. So this was an ideal place for them to come. They could stay here until their Chinese family came in from wherever, St. Anne's Bay, Montego Bay, wherever. Literally, when they said the Chinese lived in above the shop, that's true, or behind the shop.
Yeah.
You know, basically, this is what happened. They all lived right here.
So what was built first story?
It originally probably was just the first story, but you really can't see here now because the facade has changed to incorporate three. And why was that? Is because at the time this was done over, it was the tallest building in Kingston, because the priest or the feng shui person came and said that it couldn't be this, it was too short. It couldn't see, couldn't get the favorable energy, the favorable winds coming in. So it was the tallest building. And of course it's not now. We need to get it elevated again. Things have changed within the Chinese community. There is, as you know, there are two sets of Chinese now, and we don't like to try and differentiate. There are a newer set of newcomers, immigrants, who came in because of the Hong Kong situation. A lot of newcomers have come in. Also because of the free zone. They've seen Jamaica, they like what they see. They also are entrepreneurs and they know they can make money. And this is what has happened. So we have historically the people who have been here since 1854 and very close to when the temple was built, and then they have the new set. But as I said, what happened, why things have changed, that a lot of the Chinese lived here, live within 5-6 blocks of here. And you'll be surprised, and I'll show you when you go upstairs, that how people got around in some areas was that all these buildings connect. So you never need to come down here. They could walk from one shop to the other, all on top, because everything was up there. The Chinese Benevolent Association, which is the owners, the keepers, the person, we had this from 1891. We've been around since 1891. And it really was an association to assist people who could not speak even English, who wanted to come to Jamaica, who knew that there was an opportunity here versus China to make their home here. And some way we need to get them to integrate. So we needed a base, we needed an office, we needed to get them work permits or whatever, just get them situated, get them landed, so that they assistance, so they can get help.
Is it a Buddhist temple?
It's a Buddhist temple. There's nobody really practicing Buddhism in Jamaica. There are some newer groups but they're not Chinese. They're from Burma, I believe, who have 1 or 2 temples here. But there's no Chinese Buddhist temple, because Buddhism actually came from India, as you know. Historically, China was a Buddhist or a Confucian country. But then a lot of the Chinese came here, quickly went into Christianity, quickly evolved into Christianity. And the Chinese who came here knew the value of education. And the easiest way to get good education was through the churches. They all controlled major high schools. So it was easier to convert your family to get into a high school and to get that level of organization from the churches, because the churches were still very powerful at the time.
A lot of them became Roman Catholics too.
A lot of them became Roman Catholics. Majority of the Chinese who first came here were Roman Catholics.
We followed Mr. Chang across the street into the temple. Just inside the entrance to the temple were two statues of guard dogs.
Originally, our guard dogs, which are known as the food dogs, which are the temple dogs, they were probably locally made by the looks of them, but they're not in great shape right now. The problem with the guard dogs and why our temple is not doing so well is the guard dogs can hardly see out. What has happened because of security? Notice we have raised the fence, but the guard dogs serve no purpose if they can't see out. It's not in great shape. We've had problems. Our biggest problem is the incursion of water. We've had a number of pictures. The entire hall was filled with pictures of the various persons. And all of this in Chinese just details who gave money and how many and how much. This is the father of the Wang Chuans. Here is the father of the very big family, my competitors, the Hendrickson. That's their father there. And other notable persons who have contributed to the association. But as you can see, we're not actively using the building at all. So this basically was just a multifunctional building with a temple on the highest floor. Because we had an office over here.
Mr. Vincent Chang at the Chinese temple on Barry Street, giving us a glimpse of the life of the Chinese who lived and worked on Barry Street and of the temple itself.
We will restore this building and restore it to its
symbol.
former glory. No, not only a symbol, because we believe that with the coming of the affluence of the Chinese, that the Chinese are going to visit. This is from Chinese from China will visit,
tourists.
And we will have a need for something like
Very
this.
good, yes.
So we do believe in that.
Right.
We're hoping that the railroad would come fast and then everything would come in, because I believe in that too. I believe in the railroad being part of Jamaica's growth, you know. But that's just me.
So follow you in.
Yes. This gives you an idea of how old these buildings are, because all of this is all beam on post, literally beam on post, literally all wood, all beam on post over here. This shows you how old the building is. We have to pass right here. This was just literally a meeting place, another hall, or persons could sleep here. I figure that people slept here on this upper floor. Actually, what was interesting, I was mentioning that when I came through and we used to come down here and salvage what we can, I found a picture of my grandfather right here. Yes. So that was, I know, that's what I told the, everybody downstairs, that I'm the only person who comes down and communes with the spirits. This I believe to be the extension as required by the Feng Shui person who came to build the temple. You have to watch your step on this side because the stairs, and you have to walk on the right side. Just walk on the right.
We climbed carefully on the right side of the stairs, in semi-darkness, towards the actual temple.
This is the temple. During this time of year, towards Chinese New Year, this place was very, very active. So this is where everybody came. Everybody came to find out about fortune for the next year, because these are the josh sticks, good luck sticks. And here are the tablets that they read by the numbers that were thrown out. Here people came and gave and lit incense offerings to the deity, right? And this is, I believe there have been various pieces of this temple, and unfortunately, as you can see, it's not in good repair because we're having this water incursion, but we're going to get this done. These are the josh sticks that might be Cantonese, and they would,
How does it?
literally there's a number on here, and there's something attached to that number, and then somebody would read. So people would come and give donations and have their fortune predicted. This is all wood, and this is our problem. All of this is wood. All this was made. We're not sure exactly when it was put together, but we've had problems with it. We've had it just preserved a little bit, and this is why it's so shiny. But it is the only temple, and the only one we know of. We're going to put another one on at Hope Road at the new center. We will put something up, but we will not move this at all. We will probably keep this here because I do believe in preserving this site. He's a god of war, and I don't know the Chinese translation, unfortunately.
Were there priests who came with the Chinese immigrants?
We don't have any records that say so, but somebody must have come because somebody came to say that we need this building taller, and this is the only way it could have been. When I come here, I feel this very wonderful spirit. And as you see, at the time, it was the tallest building. But now, of course, things have changed, and it looked straight out. We're looking at Kingston Harbor. That is the Ministry of Security, I believe. We can come right out. Gives you this wonderful view.
Yes. Lovely sea breeze.
Yes. And there's a railroad over on this side. I just believe in the railroad as being central.
Interior of Jamaica.
Correct. We've relied so much on expensive modes of transportation when we had inexpensive sitting there. I was pointing out that everything was done. People could communicate, could travel by rooftops, and literally you can see this over here, how close.
But you had to jump over.
You could have gone from one out of the window and gone across. And this is how people did walk around, in that the young persons did get around. So they didn't have to go on the street. But then everybody lived above their store. Everybody lived here. Everybody lived downtown. And this is why this building was so active, because a lot of people came maybe on a daily basis to the temple. Now we get very few visitors. Just people like me who want to communicate with the greater spirits.
What kind of business was being done around here?
We had bakeries down here. This is where the cremos started. This is where the bakeries started. This is where the wholesalers started, the retail traders started. Everything was from this area, literally. My family had their bakery not far from here. There were stables here. There were mules down here. There are a lot of things down here. Interesting. People won't believe that. And not very long ago, the Chinese came with the desire to earn money and to go back to China. To earn money. They knew they had to depend on two things: strength of family. They knew what the family meant, and education. So this is, if you look at anything Chinese today, you will understand what I'm talking about. Still, there are a lot of family-owned businesses around. It's controlled by the family.
To this day.
Right? And the Chinese will do everything to educate their children at whatever cost. Education, they understood, because coming from China, where education was exclusive, it's not as if it was when it was today. Education was for the few. And this is the difference between the China of today and the China of yesterday. This is why you had so many dialects. And this is my theory on Chairman Mao, where he's one stroke of brilliance, he made everybody equal by having one language. When the Chinese first came here, China has over, I think there are at least 80 dialects. And the Chinese who came here, majority are one set of Chinese, and they're all Hakka Chinese. They were always the nomads of the Chinese. So traveling was never out of their heritage. My people, I guess, have always traveled, and who the Hakka people are is not really known. They were one of the founders of what's known as the Han Chinese, but their dialect, the Hakka dialect, is very old and very Turkic maybe. So they came from very far north. What is now the language of China was the language of the educated, and this is what I'm saying, Mao's stroke of brilliance. In other words, he raised the class of everybody by saying everybody speaks Mandarin. But even today, they're still within the geographic areas. People still speak their local dialect. But the majority of the people who came here, probably 99.9% of them, were Hakka speaking people. Not Cantonese, but Hakka speaking people. And because the Hakkas were not far from Hong Kong, and these were the people desirous or strong enough to come and travel 30 days, 60 days to reach Jamaica by way of Panama, by way of Nova Scotia to reach here.
Hill and Gully ride on Barry Street in downtown Kingston in the company of Mr. Vincent Chang, who is telling us the story of the Chinese temple which once dominated the skyline on Barry Street.
This is where 40% of Jamaica's trade in the retail market comes from, in this geographic area, this 1 square mile. My grandfather, up on the day he died, could hardly speak English. He spoke English with a very, very heavy Chinese. So his English was bad. My family's thing was that family was important. We all lived in 5 houses right beside each other. So I grew up in my own little community because my family said that family was important. So we all lived very close. My grandfather in the center and everybody else around him. My grandfather being the patriarch of the family. So we grew up with that sense. And then we were all educated. We were ensured that we all got education. My family came into Princess Street and we bought Valentine Bakery. And that's how my family is connected with bakery. And that the Valentines were the people who were the owners, and we bought the bakery from their daughter. And then we moved subsequently in 1957 to Red Hills Road. But that's a different story.
Do you speak Chinese?
Very little, very little.
How did you learn?
By being around my grandparents, but very little. I understand very little written, I understand very little vocal. My grandfather was very quiet, like all Chinese.
Very strict?
Very strict. And a funny side of it is this, is that my grandfather understood one thing, and he understood that as my family grew in affluence, that we should not, like everybody else, but all Jamaicans do this, because even my children do this, walk around barefooted. He found that a cardinal sin. So my grandfather had a cupboard filled with slippers. So anytime he saw you without shoes on, anything on, he would give you a pair of slippers because he knows where he's coming from. He understood poverty. He understood all of that. And he's saying, now we've reached too far to continue living like that. That's one thing. The other thing he was very good at that, I was a very sickly child. And the Chinese believed in a lot of herbal remedies. And if anytime we got sick, you'd hear my grandfather coming up the walkway with his medicine. And unfortunately, it's the worst tasting thing you can ever. So I would have to hide to get away from this. But it's the worst tasting thing, and I will never forget that. But he was a strong, very determined man, because we were in a number of businesses, a number of bakeries before. And the names like Ideal, which is an almond town, my parents were, names like Butterkiss, were all connected to my family. So these were bakeries that started, didn't do well until the formula got right in Valentine Bakery.
It must have been quite difficult to communicate.
I would imagine so. They had a hard time communicating with people just on the local level. And this is why a lot of people thought that the Chinese were snobs maybe, but it was just difficult. Because as you can imagine, speaking Chinese and then trying to learn English quickly and then trying to learn Jamaican English on top of that was not very easy. And I do believe that's part of the thing. And the Chinese being reserved just thought to themselves, just keep to yourselves instead of trying to socialize.
You remember some of those Chinese newspapers that were put out?
Yeah, there were a number of them.
What would be in those newspapers?
Literally, it was keeping the Chinese informed. And it had everything. It had news from China, maybe very old, but also news, local news, and everything else happening within the Chinese community. You must realize the majority of the Chinese could not read English. So the Chinese newspaper was their only means of gaining information.
How about food?
We would buy things like gaozu from the people on the street.
What is it?
It's like a Chinese wonton skin with meat, and that's steamed, usually with pork. Then we would have something called one ban, which was like a rice pudding in a little terracotta bowl. And those are the things that would happen. And of course, everybody knows the steamed buns, the xiaobao. Chinese for hot bread. Literally, it's a dough with meat inside. So those are three things I grew up with as eating. And they always made every day downtown, and there were always people selling that when I was very young, but it doesn't happen today. A lot of the persons who lived here also spoke Jamaicans, I'm talking about, non-Chinese, who also could converse in Chinese. There are one or two persons. There's one I was told that gentleman who sold fish could speak Chinese. And one or two of these ladies learned from somebody, and they continue to do this and sell these items. And they could converse in Chinese. And they would put me to shame today, because they're a lot better than I am.
In the year 2001, we met Daniel Warren Kidd, who said he taught many of the newly arrived Chinese immigrants to speak English, and they taught him Chinese. He remembers one shopkeeper in particular.
So there's a Chinese shop nearby?
Yeah, John Lee was his name. Oh, they were very good Chinese. I used to write for Lee Town, that's John's uncle.
Right.
He couldn't write English. Oh. So every time he couldn't write a letter for me.
What you know in Chinese, sir?
Oh, don't let me tell you.
Just give me one word.
One word?
Or two.
No, I'll give you a sentence.
Yes. Which means what?
Oh, that black man is a teacher and no Chinese language good. Let me come for you too. You want go down, right? Yit ni sam si look chip pat q ship ship yit ship ni ship sam ship si ship and go on to 100. That is in the Punti law. But in the Akar law, they don't speak one language.
When you were a boy, what did you see around here?
I don't think life was as dangerous. And I think a lot of things, it was more peaceful, more harmonious. Everybody was there to make money. Everybody was working. Everybody was living. I don't believe this tension that we have today, even downtown here, was there.
You remember the wagons and the mules?
I do remember there was one here always on Princess Street, Barrett Street, always.
Selling hot bread.
No, just taking you around. He was like a taxi. He was a taxi, and you could hire him. And people dressed up in white all the time. I don't know if it was flower bag clothes, but they were always in white. I've told the government and asked the government to dedicate this area as Chinatown of Kingston. And I think they have done so in the restoration plans for Kingston. They will deem this area Chinatown, because no matter what anybody tells me, this is where the Chinese of Jamaica made their start. Right here in this little area. I believe, I have this gut feeling that if we do a lot with Kingston, and we do a lot with our building, you'd be surprised. Not only visitors from China, but all visitors probably would want to take a tour and hear what has happened. Not only about the Chinese, but anybody else, because as you know, the ports are right there. And people ask me, why the Chinese end up here? I said, maybe they just walk straight up, and the first room they got was here. And that's how they started, and that was it. And one person told the next person told the next person. Because that's how the migration really started. I mean, one person getting a break here and saying, listen, you come here and work, I help you, and you start, and that's how it went.
Barrett Street in downtown Kingston, what some people call Chinatown, which is now a part of the rich and colorful heritage of our country. Chinese first came to Jamaica in 1854, 16 years after emancipation. Thank you for watching Hill and Gully Ride.